So the Boise High bomb threat this week is actually a really good example of the work we do. Dr. Ferris leads that situation when you talk about coordinating the bus services, food service, our facilities and operations, student safety. All of those things filter through Dr. Ferris this week. Our roles as other directors is to facilitate helping her do those kinds of things. So she becomes, and the terminology is the incident commander on our side as far as how those decisions are made. So it's a really good example of the work we do as area directors. The second part to that is that, and the way I explain our jobs the best is the principals report directly to us. So all the principals from elementary, junior high, and high school report directly to the area director. And so anything that the principal is dealing with becomes our issues at this level. And our role then is to carry those issues, deal with those issues, and then conceptually work, like Ann said, with the superintendent on creating the vision as far as where this district goes. That's kind of the.
Okay, thank you for explaining that. So another one of your roles then would be to hire teachers. And this is what we're meeting here about today. I know that you're not the first step in the hiring process. The first step would be that we as applicants would get online at the school district that we desire to work and fill out an application, submit it online. Where does it go from there, Dr. Ferris?
HR distributes well, first of all, HR examines them to make sure they're all complete. So it's really important when people fill out their application that they get every piece of that file in. We really do look at that. Every aspect of that application file is important. Spelling,
Okay.
the time that people take, you can tell if they really quickly wrote out some answers,
Okay.
or if they really took time to think through and give thoughtful answers.
Okay.
So that's really key. So HR checks that. Then once they determine that the file is complete, they pass that on to the screener.
And what types of things does the screener scrutinize with respect to what goes on to the next level?
I think for us, to start with, it's really important to know that if you have multiple areas of a major, you need to screen with each person from that area. I think sometimes people don't know that. So if folks are applying for Boise and they have a degree in math and science, they'll want to screen with the math supervisor and the science supervisor, that you actually receive separate scores in those. So that's just a logistical thing.
So the screening is an actual interview.
It's an actual interview.
Okay.
We have area supervisors, curricular area supervisors, who, like Ann said, go through the information that is given to the district, and then set up a face-to-face interview with the candidate. And typically that interview is around curriculum. So your knowledge of subject area, your how you would teach a lesson, your ability to communicate the content to students. That's typically that type of an interview.
Okay. And pardon me for interrupting,
That's
but
right.
where do grades come into play? College and high school grades, are those looked at on the level of the application, or do
It's typically done at the supervisory level. So when you're coming for your screening interview, they typically have your transcript with them as they're interviewing.
okay?
It's all part of the puzzle. So I used to do hundreds of screening interviews, and I would look at their grades and see, in their content area specifically, if they had some really low grades or just some patterns there. It's like, well, it makes you question a little bit work ethic and things like that. So it is a piece of the puzzle, although if somebody has an amazing interview and really has presence and can articulate a great deal of knowledge of instruction and content, that carries a lot of weight. So if you had a bad grade somewhere along the way that was kind of maybe an anomaly, it's still okay. And then I wanted to mention too that obviously the elementary folks are screened differently.
Yes.
They're not screened by a content supervisor, they're screened by one of our elementary principals.
I see.
So, and the principals then are that next line of hiring. So for our elementary folks, they get direct exposure to a principal.
I see. So hypothetically, if someone were applying for, say, an engineering position, they would need high knowledge in math and engineering. In the teaching profession, there's more to play than just what someone's transcripts look like.
Yeah, I think Ann said it very well just a second ago. The issue here isn't, it's a part of the puzzle. It is not the deciding part of the puzzle. Teaching is a unique profession. And you aren't always going to fit into the box that people that outside of education may need to fit into in order to receive a job. That's not to disparage that one way or another, but you have to have multiple skill sets to be an effective teacher. It cannot just be about whether you know content. Content is important. You have to know your content, but it isn't any more important than your presence and your ability to connect with kids.
Okay.
So it comes at, when you're talking about transcripts and those kinds of things, it's a piece. It's not the deciding factor.
Okay, so that leads me to my final question, and that would be, what do you consider the most or the most important things, attributes of a potential educator that would separate them from, I mean, if I'm safe in assuming that there's more applicants than there are positions available,
Yes.
how do you discriminate between those that you believe would be a good educator? Dr. Ferris?
I think presence, Kobe just mentioned, is huge. The ability to relate, which is so apparent in an interview. I mean, everyone's nervous during interviews.
Right.
But a person's ability to relate so that you can picture them in front of parents. You can picture them sitting down dealing with difficult situations beyond just that instructional piece. That they can really articulate well their passion for teaching and relate that through their answers of their, well, this is a lesson that I designed and here's how it went. I think too, being very real. Here's what I wish I would have done differently, and this worked. And just showing that reflective quality, I think, is really key too. And so it's really those personality traits that would be a successful skill set in any profession, that are critical in teaching because it's all about people. And there's such a variety, as you know, of students, staff, and administration that you come into across. How are you going to relate and adapt and be flexible in those situations?
And to piggyback on that just a little bit, Ann talked about the relationship piece of this and that skill set you bring. We're in the people business. That's what we do. Lots of companies are out there and they may be in the software business, but we're in the people business. And so when I think about a quality teacher, what I'm thinking about is they first of all know who they are. Okay? They gotta know what they believe in, and they gotta know what they stand for. And I think so many times, and I think Ann can relate to this, we interview people who are trying to tell us what they think we want to hear. And
which I think would be, something that we all try to anticipate what you want the answers to be.
And I always say this about that. If you tell me everything I want to hear, but it doesn't fit with you philosophically, emotionally, then you're going to be miserable in the job that you just got. And so there has to be a little bit of selfishness when you come to do an interview. And I don't mean that in a negative sense. I mean, you have to look out for your own best interests as well. And if it doesn't feel right to you, then you're probably not looking at the right job. So you have to find that match, and that's sometimes really hard. I can tell you that philosophically, when we do interviews, and we do a lot of interviews, we are looking to put people into positions to pull out their true beliefs. Okay? We're not that interested in anything more than that. That's probably the biggest thing that I see time and time and time again is we'll put you in a scenario, ask you a question, and then they They are searching to figure out through body language and watching us as to whether we agree with what they're saying, so they can play on that, and they really just need to speak from the heart. What do they believe in? Do you believe that all kids can learn? And if so, you need to show that during an interview.
Right.
And some things that can seem minor, like the way you dress and
Yes.
present yourself, is critical because that's that first impression you can never get back. Throwaway comments you may make because you're nervous. For example, I had someone say, gosh, it was a question they were struggling with a little bit. And instead of saying, stalling with, that's a really good question, they said, gosh, I should have prepared for this interview. Well, that says to me, yeah, I mean, examine the district's website that you were
Right.
interviewing for. Look at their strategic plan. Look at so that you can say, when they say at the end, do you have any questions for us? You can say, well, I noticed on your web, and it shows us initiative and care enough to go the extra step to prepare.
Very good advice.
Yeah, and I mean, on our website is our values and our mission and our all of those things are important prior to the interview. Like Ann said, preparing for the interview, because that's what we stand for. So you got to make sure you fit into what we stand for, or you're not gonna be happy in the profession that you're in. And every district's different, and every interview is a little bit different, and every building is different. And so,
The textbook in our class is called Those Who Can Teach. And so we've spent a lot of time evaluating and trying to determine if we are going into this profession for the right reasons.
right,
And I think that the things that you've said today are helpful because at this level, there's still time for people to change their minds. If when in an interview they would have to not be real and answer questions the way they think that they want to be answered, like you said, they probably would not end up being happy in this profession. And that's not what anybody wants, is a teacher that's unhappy teaching.
Exactly.
So I thank you both very much for your time. I really
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been valuable
Yep.
information.
you bet.
I'll edit my face out.